Hey everyone, welcome back. This is my 6-month carnivore update, and we'll have to check the audio on this recording after we're done, just because I thought it was such a beautiful day and I live on a very busy street corner. So why not just share my little piece of the world with you? But anyhow, so you'll have to forgive me if the audio isn't super, but I thought with my earbuds at least there might be some noise canceling. So, I'm going to go over with you everything that's happened in the last 6, almost 7 months, and also some big challenges that I encountered about 3 months ago. Now that I'm back, I just have so much more information and clarity about everything that I can share with you. If you're going to hang around, just remember, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Liking videos is actually quite important because that's what helps you rank higher in the YouTube algorithm. So if you have your own channel, just make sure that you're also encouraging people to like and subscribe to your channel too. So let's dive in. I am in such a different place than I was 3 months ago right now. Yet again, it's like the first 3 months were, that was kind of like my trial or my dating period with the carnivore diet. And I'm so glad that I've pressed on and that I kept going regardless of what was happening in my body. I have tried to record other videos in the last 3 months, and it wasn't really until yesterday that I felt like my brain was really back in the game. And I don't want to waste anybody's time with content where I don't feel like I'm sharing something that is important. So I really love you all for hanging around, and we've gained a couple of new subscribers. We're almost at 50. I just can't wait until we grow to 100 and 1,000 and 1,000 again being the magic number, folks, so that we can start having more fun and doing YouTube live videos here. But anyhow, I'm just grateful for all of you who have stepped up and shared some of your story and left some comments. That has encouraged me so much while I was in 100% self-care mode. I was noticing after a few months, so I think my last update was probably a 4 or 5 month update, and I was starting to have decreasing amounts of energy. And that's saying something because I don't have a lot of energy to begin with. So I started investigating, and this has been a nonstop research project for me. Ever since I started thinking about starting carnivore, I knew that I needed to stay on top of issues as they arose. Sorry, big trucks. And we live by a fire station. When I started noticing that I was having decreasing energy again, I was like, okay, there's something that we need to look at here. There's something that needs adjustment or it needs support. I had been, like I was saying, nonstop research project for me for the past 7 months plus. And it's been so fascinating because as I've come across different coaches that are either in the keto or in the carnivore world, or both, because there are people who are like a ketovore or they're more like carnivore-ish, where they don't strictly stay just on meat, and they might have the occasional vegetable or they might have the occasional avocado. And it's been really interesting to hear how when they're discussing issues that are showing up with some of their people, how electrolytes and gallbladder function just keeps coming up. And that's what I recognized, because those symptoms of what people were describing to their coaches and then how they overcame it, 100% on the money. I've been taking electrolytes for years, usually just in the summer. So, give you a little bit of background. I haven't been able to work for the last few years. I am on disability currently, but that still doesn't preclude me from doing things like background acting and face painting. So, normally this time of year, we're super busy. We would be in our busiest time of the year, and that we would also have just finished the Calgary Stampede, and I made sure that I always took electrolytes because we'd be outside in 30 plus degrees heat in a tent, face painting for 6 to 8 hours, sometimes a little bit less, but I always planned for the long days just to make sure that I would make it through, and electrolytes played a huge they were a huge factor. I found one that was good with the food intolerances that I had, and I didn't eat sugar before this anyway, unless I was having a real treat or a cheat day or something. But so those electrolytes didn't have any sugar, and I tolerated them really well. I had a few left when I first started Carnivore, and I took them on the days where I felt like I had really bad migraines or headaches. The electrolytes help me get through that, but I also find that they're a good measure of prevention for me for my migraines in the summer. My migraines aren't always weather related. Mine are kind of all over the map. We haven't been able to identify the cause, if there is a single cause, because I also have autoimmune issues and I have other conditions that include migraines along with the rest of the picnic basket they bring with them. So I don't think we'll ever actually know which one or what is it that causes my migraines, but there are certain things that I recognize, like pressure and weather patterns. It's usually the big pressure changes that affect me more. So that's coming into our summer season, having big pressure changes, big thunderstorms. We live near the mountains. We get all kinds of wild weather at the very last minute. It moves in very quickly where we live here in Calgary, and also because I'm on the western edge of the city as well. But I was starting to struggle with having more headaches, and then it turned into a full-blown fibromyalgia flare with my Ehlers-Danlos flaring. My osteoarthritis in my back has been bad for 3 months, and my psoriatic arthritis was flaring also. So I really had to scale things back. Even from doing a video a day or doing 2 videos a week, it was too much. I started having a lot of brain fog again, and it was really challenging, to have conversations with my friends on the good days and say to them, like, I'm having a good day. I feel like my brain has checked in today. Instead of checking out, because my brain has been checked out for the greater part of like 5 years. So it's frustrating a little bit when you start having that clarity and you see glimpses of yourself, but the frustration is very, very quickly overcome with so much hope that, hey, maybe if we can have a couple of clear days a week, or maybe we can have a couple clear days, in a row even, or start having good weeks and clear days and clear months. So that's the hope that I've always lived with. And lo and behold, here we are, 3 months of intensive self-care at home and lots of love and support from friends and family. And I have overcome that particular stick point. It's interesting to mention as well that I knew that this was going to happen. I've talked a lot in my other videos about the fact that I've been practicing yoga for years and years. And one of the first things that one of my favorite instructors ever said is that it's like peeling back layers when you're doing yoga, because you start discovering injuries that you've forgotten you'd sustained and the damage that remained unhealed. So you go through a healing crisis, and if you've never experienced a healing crisis, it can just look like you're getting sick with something all new again, or that your symptoms from one particular illness or another are flaring up. So my healing crisis revolved more around my digestive system, because I obviously had been very, very committed and, doing my damnedest to stay under 10 grams of carbs a day to, be as close to zero carb as possible. There's some carbs in eggs. There's a little bit of carbs in coffee. So those aren't things that I'm talking about added sugar. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the things that are generally approved for, most people who are carnivore. And if you look at the carnivores that have been doing this for over a decade, most of them will say, yeah, you know what, I eat butter, I eat meat. Some of them drink coffee, some of them don't. Some cycle out of drinking coffee and back in like I do. And so I've been very strict about that. And that hasn't been hard for me. It's actually easier when you take the guesswork out of it and that you just look at it and go, yeah, these are my options for today. This is the meat that I took out. If I feel like I need some more fat, I can have bacon grease or butter. I ended up going pretty much completely off bacon grease for a couple of months because I couldn't tolerate it. It's like my taste buds, there was something wrong. I wasn't tasting food properly. That's what it felt like to me. And the more I started noticing aversions to things, it was starting to be just, no appetite and super nauseous again and, trying to contend with that. We might have to move inside if it's too windy. But anyway, so I had 3 months of really challenged eating. So what I did was I wanted to take steps that are a little bit backwards for most people. I started tracking my food, not because I wanted to count my macros, not because I wanted to track my calories, but because I wanted to make sure I was eating enough every day. Because I would get to the end of the day and I'd go, God, did I even eat anything today? I was getting back to that place. And I described that early in my journey for carnivore when I was adapting, that, I was having some issues with appetite. And that's something I've struggled with for years when I'm going through intense periods of nausea or there's something going on. Finally, I was able to... I narrowed down the electrolytes portion, so that was kind of one of the first things I did was I looked at, okay, maybe I need to start taking electrolytes. Found a powder on Amazon in the US. I couldn't get it from Amazon.ca, so I, went for it and ordered from Amazon.com, which I have no issues with that. I've ordered from the US site loads and loads, but it's got it's a zero carb electrolyte that is unflavored, although it does kind of leave a little weird aftertaste. It kind of tastes sweet almost at first, but then the longer it sits in the water, it kind of gets a little bit like, I don't know, it just develops a very strange taste and texture, and even I don't know, it's a non-flavor. So what I've started doing is I mix it in with just a little bit of water and I take it more like a shot, and then I drink the rest of my water in, either sparkling water, because I have a soda stream that I adore. So I drink lots of sparkling water in the summer, usually more hot water in the summer, but there's been a lot more water in my life, and that has helped tremendously. Already I was probably drinking 2 liters of water a day when I first started taking the electrolytes, and I just felt like I was always, I couldn't stay hydrated. So anyhow, the electrolytes, that's one factor. So that's been going strong now for probably about a month, and I'm taking them twice a day. When I'm making my buttered Americano at whatever time of day I happen to be getting up, I start with electrolytes beforehand, and it's one tiny little scoop. So I do that, and I'll have my coffee, or if I'm having a cup of tea that day, or because it's been so nice, I brewed some lavender black iced tea, and that's just black tea, and you throw a teaspoon of lavender flowers and you infuse it and steep it while it's hot, leave it overnight, throw it in the fridge to cool, and you're good to go. Or throw it in the fridge after it's cool. But, anyhow, that electrolyte portion, that's like once a day wasn't enough, because I would notice that I was getting really, really severe pain and like that fire sensation that you get with fibromyalgia. Like at night, it felt like my extremities were on fire. And yes, I do take medication for fibromyalgia, and I also medicate with my medical cannabis, because that's a huge part of all of these therapies integrated together. But even then, it still wasn't enough to stop me from waking up in the middle of the night. I've been taking electrolytes twice a day at regular, semi-regular times. Like again, usually with morning coffee. And then after that, it's usually around dinner time. If I'm like, whatever dinner time is for me, that doesn't mean 5 or 6, but if I'm still not feeling really hungry, or if I'm starting to feel a bit nauseous, because that happens also when I get hungry, so not a good combination, I'll take my electrolytes and cook my dinner, which is usually these days a chuck steak that is amazing. Thank you, Cut Right Meats. I love you guys. But I'll cook my chuck steak, and then of course I let it rest after it comes off the barbecue. And if I'm not hungry by the time the meat is done resting, then I usually am like, okay, I'm still, there's something still not going on. Now, something that gets talked about a lot for people who are beginner carnivores at the beginning of their journey, that there's like heartburn, and people who are coming to carnivore who have things like GERD, they have severe heartburn, they're taking ranitidine or Zantac or some other, either prescription or OTC medication for heartburn. And I know people who pop Tums like they're Tic Tacs, like I used to when I was pregnant. But it's really, it's something that it gets talked about, because some people are already on medications, and that's the thing that they're trying to heal, and that they're still experiencing those issues through like the first, sometimes it's 6 months, or it could be even longer. It could be only a couple of weeks, depending on the severity of your condition. So I was always feeling that pressure. And it was like, kind of around my sternum, not quite as low as my xiphoid process, and not up here. It just felt like that heartburn, that kind of acid refluxy thing. And I've been dealing with that for most of my adult life. I first started taking meds for severe heartburn and lack of stomach acid when I was in my early 20s. So, and that's been like an on and off thing, from that point forward, depending on how I was feeling. And so it's interesting to note also that was one of the fittest periods of time in my life, but I was eating the standard American diet with a focus on maybe a little bit more protein at that point, because I was still ski instructing. But that I had gone to get a scope because the doctor I was seeing suspected, she thought maybe I had an ulcer, so we needed to rule that out. And the scope came back clean. There was nothing. And that's how all of my scopes have gone. They always come back clean and there's nothing. So at that point, I started taking ranitidine, and it helped tremendously. But now, that's all gone. And the reason why that is all gone is because I am working on my gallbladder. And y'all might be sitting there going, girl, you need your head examined. You have acid reflux and you're working on your gallbladder? And my answer is yes. And the reason why it's yes is because what happens, and this is something that is new information to me, but I have seen this confirmed through multiple doctors talking about gallbladder deficiency, bile sludge, and problems with especially people who are post gallbladder removal, that they have a hard time digesting fats. So being in ketosis and being fat adapted to a certain point got me through my first few months. But then when the lack of energy showed up and I started tracking how much I was eating, I was like, maybe I'm not eating enough fat. I was eating as much meat as I possibly could stomach and trying to eat loads of butter with that. And that's when I started noticing at night, I would wake up in the middle of the night and sit bolt upright because I had to burp. And I felt like if I was going to try and burp while I was lying down, that I would throw up. And at one point, it got so bad that I would get these severe nausea attacks. And I actually did throw up once. And me, like, throwing up is something that happens maybe once every 5 years or once a decade. So when I throw something up and vomit, it's usually because there's something that's really not right at that point. So thanks to people like Dr. Ken Berry and it's Stephanie Keto, I think. Oh my God, I'll put links in the bio. I'm terrible at remembering what people's usernames are on YouTube. But anyway, they talk extensively about what happens in the gallbladder, and especially the descriptions that I've heard from a lot of different doctors that are familiar with the ketogenic way of eating or the carnivore diet is that it's now been shown time and time again that people on low-fat diets, so hear me people, low-fat diets tend to wind up with gallbladder issues. It's not people that are on high-fat diets that have gallbladder issues. A lot of the time, unless it's something that you're just kind of new to and you're sort of going through that adaptation, that's normal, that your body's going to take some time to adapt. Mine was pretty much like, no, you and food are friends off, and we're not eating because that's gross and it makes us feel yucky. So I dig into my memory, my catalog of medical treatments that I've had in my lifetime, and think back to when I was going to a great naturopath here in Calgary, who also, by the way, has a fabulous clinic in Arizona, I think in Scottsdale, and his name is Dr. Jeff Drobot. First name is actually spelled Jeoff, not Geoff. But really great naturopath, and he was very kind to me when I first started having a lot of digestive issues that were totally flared up 10 years ago plus. Yeah, it was probably about 12 years ago. Anyway, he had put me on an ox bile supplement, and the words that he said to me when we talked about supplementing, and I mentioned this in my other video yesterday, my coffee with Mare, was that there's a reason why they're called supplements and not core nutrition. And I'm not the only person to have said that, I can guarantee you. So back to gallbladder, low fat diets, okay? And I was low fat for probably since the late 80s, early 90s, just because of my dad's health issues. That's what people were doing. So fast forward 20 years of eating, 20 years plus of low fat everything, and, diet this and that, and thinking that was a better choice. What happens, from what I understand, is you develop bile sludge. And what happens with bile sludge is that your gallbladder essentially is congested. So, if you've had that really bad cold and you feel like your lungs are so congested and then you just start coughing up a whole bunch of mucus, okay, imagine that process happening in your gallbladder. That it takes time. And with lung infections in particular, it can be months, years even, before you recover from that. So I was having and experiencing acute symptoms from, my gallbladder not being happy. Okay, a lot of people at that point probably would have gone to see their doctor, but I've been down this road before and it leads to nowhere, because I would have to sit and explain every day of the last 7 months probably before a doctor would comprehend what situation I'm in right now. And it would take months to get in to see my specialist anyway, because I do have a GI specialist that I know and trust. But I was like, no, we can do something about this. We have the knowledge. I have a PhD in me at this point. And for all of you who have been out there working on your health for 20 plus years, you know what I'm talking about. You have become a specialist in your own health. And I rely heavily on my network of specialists and doctors and different practitioners. So it's not like I don't go to doctors and that they don't know what's going on. But at this point, access to medical care, since I'm still sheltering in place as much as possible, is it's not something that I want to bog down the medical system, because I'm trying to clean up my own health. And I have the experience, let's say, and I know when to call the cavalry and get support if I can't figure it out. So ox bile is an interesting supplement. It will supplement the bile that you have in your body, okay? Because normally what happens is your liver gets triggered to create bile, and that gets secreted and it gets stored in the gallbladder, so that when you need to digest fats and when you need your bile, that it's there for you. So if you have no gallbladder, or your gallbladder is extremely congested, you don't have a good quality of bile, and you can't digest those fats. So that's what was happening to me. And the less appetite I had, the more I was starting to be concerned. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm eating. So the tracking started again, just so I could see from day to day how I was doing. If I had a really good day and I ate loads, that was awesome. Super, super happy. And if I didn't, I also had somebody or something that was helping me look at, well, you know what though? 2 days ago, I ate like a lot of meat and I was kind of hungry. And then the next day, I didn't really eat that much. And that's kind of a normal cycle anyway, when you're only eating once or twice a day. So it's just making sure that that didn't continue for 2 days in a row. Because after 2 days, for me, I'm not feeling good. I can go a day without really eating a whole lot, and that it would kind of be status quo if I start going over those 2 days. And it's not intentional. I'm not trying to fast. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to do anything. I want to eat 2 pounds of meat. Look at me. This face, this brain looks at a couple pounds of beautiful, fresh off the grill chuck steak, and I'm salivating. And I would get 5 bites in and go, oh, this doesn't taste good anymore. I don't feel good. I don't want to eat, right? So it took a while to kind of figure out dosing the ox bile. And I'm not going to talk about dosages, because I have figured out what works for me. And without having a very, very full conversation with somebody who is 100% certain that they want to start taking ox bile, I wouldn't make recommendations. I know kind of what the general rule of thumb is for where you want to start. And for a while I was dividing my capsules. I did find capsules that are 500 milligrams of pure quality ox bile, and I bought them on Amazon. And I do have like a capsule making kit. So, and I bought some new gelatin caps, because before I had veggie caps, and they were old anyway. So I got some gelatin caps, and that's far better for us anyway while we're carnivore. I don't want to eat plants right now. So, too much ox bile. Once you have used what you need to use, the rest gets shipped out with the rest of the poop that's saying goodbye. It's not something that you can really develop toxicity unless you're taking it for a really, 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 really long time and taking lots and lots and lots of it. I think that that's kind of, that would probably be the best road if you wanted to. But for the most part, it's something that it's like when you have a multivitamin and your body can't process all of it, or it's got enough, you end up peeing out the rest. Same thing with ox bile. You use what you need, and then the rest leaves. That can cause some pretty severe diarrhea if you're not sure about your dosage though. So, like I said, it was an experiment. This isn't something I would recommend that you do or try on your own, especially if you know nothing about this stuff. But I finally figured it out, and it's been a whole new cycle of adaptation for me, and regaining the energy and the mental clarity that I was starting to have, because now I was so proud the other day when I ate like 10 to 12 ounces of steak in one sitting, and I had like a homemade sauce, beautiful sauce béarnaise, which is just, oh, it's fabulous. I'm going to make it with you one day because I think all carnivores should know this recipe because it's fantastic. It's like making a blender hollandaise, and hollandaise and béarnaise sauce are the same base with different seasonings added to them, but it's the easiest thing in the world, and it's so tasty. And when the sauce cools off, it makes a really great spread for putting on pork rinds, or if you make it so that it's not too firm, it's almost like a dip. In the fridge, it winds up with a consistency that is somewhere between cold butter and mayonnaise, regardless. So that 10-ounce steak day, that was a turning point. And that was just less than a week ago, I think. It's like suddenly the lights went on again. I know this has been a bit of a longer update, folks, but I really wanted to share a lot more detail because there's been so much that's happened. And so the combination of taking ox bile, and now I only take it once a day, and it works for me, because I'm only eating once or twice a day. I don't feel like I have to take it with each meal. I take it when I'm having my primary meal, because usually I'll have like my one meal, and then if I'm still hungry, I'll have another meal that's a little bit smaller. So it kind of serves for all of that, and my gastrointestinal issues have really settled down. Things are a lot calmer, and my stomach feels more comfortable, and just my guts in general. I wake up in the morning and I'm just kind of like, oh, we're feeling pretty happy now. I have energy, and I feel like the lights are back on in my world, because they really truly went out for a couple months there. And to get me through that, I can't even tell you how important it was for me to actively be in with my support network. And those are my really, really good close friends that I talk to, and my family, and my daughter. My daughter is 12, but she's an amazing 12, and she's very nurturing and so caring. And, when she sees that mommy's having a bad day, oh, she's a big girl, and she cooks for herself, and she comes to hang out with me, and she's just so good. And I'm so proud of her, because I ask her if she needs something. She's like, no, mama, it's okay, I can do it, I'll go get it. And which is not like a typical day for a 12-year-old, right? Usually it's kind of like, oh, can you serve me, please, my staff? So on the days where it's like the roles are reversed slightly, it makes me a little bit sad for just a moment that my 12-year-old daughter has that capacity, and I think that has developed because she has a chronically ill parent. But it's also quite fun, because it's like the shoes on the other foot, and you have someone who is seeing what it's like to care for another person. So I'm incredibly blessed for my little girl. She's amazing, and I tell her every day that I possibly can, that she's just so awesome, and that she's just this little light shining in the world. So that is the bulk of what's happened in the last 3 months, even though I did post a carnivore update. It was 3 months ago, I think. This has been a whole other level. This is what I think that the average or normal person who is going from the SAD diet to carnivore would experience, because I did not feel like my adaptation was like what everyone else's experience was describing. And now I finally feel like I'm having that, because I'm able to digest the fats with the ox bile. And by the way, this ox bile protocol, I'm only going to be doing this for a few months. And then it's like slowly decreasing and tapering off to see how my gallbladder is performing on its own. If I find that I'm still having a lot of challenges, maybe we'll just do another couple months of ox bile, And that's not something that worries me. It's not something that I am scared of taking, because I had taken it before under the supervision of my naturopath, and I know that it's working. I know that it's doing its job with the electrolytes. So it was a two-factor job. We needed those two elements to get sorted out. And, I am so joyful right now, because I don't know, I see life in a completely different way. And this isn't something that, how can I explain this? I've gone through this kind of cycle of having no energy, and then all of a sudden it's like, boop, I start feeling a little bit more awake. What happens is my body will naturally go from wanting to sleep until 2 or 3 in the afternoon to spontaneously waking up between 8 and 10 in the morning. So when I've turned a corner, it usually coincides with my brain deciding, hey, you've slept enough, you need to get up. So intense rest period, intense, and that is where most of my 3 months was spent, was resting consciously and deliberately. So most people are like, oh yeah, well, you just kind of lie down and go to sleep. Yeah, but you can only sleep so many hours a day. I mean, even in a completely depleted state, I still would top out at maybe 14 hours consecutively. And then I would be awake for a few hours, and depending on what week it is, whether my daughter is home or whether she's over at her dad's, that would really be a key factor in determining, how many conscious hours in a day I had. And now it's like I have one of my buttered coffees, which before I was having 2 of those, so that's already like a double espresso. I was having 2 of those and had no energy. The lights are still off, but it was a comfort thing. And now I'm having coffee, no coffee, maybe some iced tea, and it is totally cool. And I feel like I have energy, and I don't feel like caffeine buzzed or have that caffeine anxiousness, I guess. And that also, caffeine is processed by the liver, right? So by giving my liver a little bit of a break, so that, it's probably making some bile, it's probably not the best quality yet. That's going to take time. And that also involves your gallbladder purging out all of the sludge. And the only way that can happen is by having new bile to put in there. So let's circle back to the low-fat diet for a second. The bile that stays in your gallbladder that turns into sludge can also turn into gallstones. And a lot of people end up having their gallbladder removed. And I will never tell you that you shouldn't have surgery that's been recommended for you. But my question would always be, what have you tried other than pharmaceuticals to try and heal your gallbladder? So it's a food for thought thing. And I understand what it's like to have been living with something and discomfort, and that you finally feel like you have a solution. And for people like my dad, had his gallbladder removed. Funny, low-fat diet, right? And regardless, there's sometimes, for some people, a possibility of not having to go the surgical route. So I have never had major surgery, and it's something that, as a person who has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I am at a higher risk of infection, of not healing, of having much, much slower healing and recovery time, and potentially more pain. And also, and I really want to talk about this in a separate video about EDS, but people with EDS tend to also be able to take painkillers and that they have very little to no effect, which that's been my case for most of my life. So taking things like Tylenol is completely useless to me. And also anesthetics can be non-effective. Think dental surgery, think a local anesthetic. It's always taken them way, 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 way more to freeze me than it should have. And I think that that also explains a lot about when I delivered my child and that birthing experience that I had. So that's going to be a topic for another day. And I just really hope that I've kind of covered enough about the last 3 months, that you've got more information and that you see how much this way of eating is impacting my life. And I'm never going to tell anybody that they should do it. I do recommend that people give serious thoughts to different ways of eating than how they are currently eating if they're having major health problems. So whether that means you need to be carnivore, keto, gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan, it's what's going to work for your body. And I've always known that my body likes meat. And if you've always known that your body likes vegetables, then that's what you do. But I know that this body it was born and raised in Alberta, and it likes to eat beef. So I live in the best place for it, because Alberta beef is some of the best in the world. All right, I think that's quite enough. Like, subscribe, stay tuned. I'm so happy to be back and continue sharing my journey in my life, and I really hope you will do the same, and that you believe me when I say that I want to hear your story, and I want to see how we can either work together or how I can help you, and if there's resources that you need. So for today, everybody, it's SickMom. Checking out.